Okay, class, welcome back to online school. Hopefully you guys are battling the coronavirus okay, and none of you have been affected or none of your family members have. If you have and you need any sort of assistance as far as working on academics or schedules or something, please make sure you reach out to me and let me know. Okay, so today we're going to talk about pitches that work. And when you think about pitches for business, there's really kind of two types that you're going to have to do: an elevator pitch and then a pitch deck. And we're going to go over both of those today in different parts. We're going to do the elevator pitch first, and then we're going to do the pitch deck second as a separate video. So my professor persona is back on the screen. He was requested by some of the students, so I brought him back. I appreciate you guys requesting him to come back. I think you guys like looking at him a little bit better than you like looking at probably the regular me. But anyway, I mean, heck, I'd have to admit I like looking at him better than looking at me. So we're going to start off, before we actually get into how to do the pitches, 10 ways to ruin a pitch. And this is kind of modeled after a David Letterman top 10 list. For those of you that know who David Letterman is and aren't like, who the heck's that? He's the guy kind of before Fallon and those guys. And of course, before Letterman and them, the late night guys were Carson. And no, I'm not old enough to know Carson. I did watch me some Letterman though. So 10 ways to ruin a pitch. Let's talk about it. Number one, take a really long time to explain what your talk is about. In other words, at the beginning of this presentation, I said we're going to learn about elevator pitches and we're going to learn about a pitch deck. But I could have said, hey, so welcome to class. Today we're going to learn about some stuff to do with business. I haven't decided yet if the business will be financial stuff, or maybe we'll talk about how to hire people, or we could be talking about legal things because they're important to business too. And then I might have worked around to talking about, oh no, really, we're going to talk about investing in pitch decks. So if you want to take a long time and bore your audience at the beginning, start that way. You could, of course, speak slowly and very dramatically. Because, I mean, why talk if you can orate, right? I mean, if you've taken drama classes and you know how to orate well, you may want to do this. But for those regular people, just, have a conversation. Don't try to be extra dramatic. Don't try to talk in a way or a manner that is not natural to you. You might want to subtly let everyone know how important you are. So, welcome to my speech. I am a University of Houston student, captain of the football team. I date the nicest looking cheerleader in the school. Oh, by the way, in addition to that, I am a Rhodes Scholar going to Oxford next year. I make straight A's. I'm the president of 3 on-campus clubs. So, that's not subtly letting people know how important you are. That's really dramatically letting them know. But subtly is still working all of those same types of things into your conversation during your speech. You don't really want to do that. 4, if you've written a book or you have a great history, you might want to constantly refer to it. And even better if you have a quote like, well, quoting Steve Wilbur, blah, blah, blah. Don't really want to do that. It's kind of a way to ruin a pitch. I remember interviewing a person for a job one time, and he kept referring to himself in the third person. Well, Charles thinks, and his name was Charles. And it took me a while to figure out, like, this guy's kind of weird. He keeps talking about himself in the third person. So anyway, you don't want to do that kind of stuff when you're making a pitch. You might want to not cram your slides with tons of bullet points and multiple fonts. You can see I did multiple fonts on multiple fonts, and even that's like hard to look at. So imagine having a whole presentation with tons of different fonts and tons of bullet points and a bunch of stuff on a slide. Keep it a little bit more simple. Let the people focus on what you're talking about. So if you want to ruin your pitch, take the opposite. Use a lot of unexplained technical jargon. And I think all of us have probably been in a talk or spoken to someone or heard a speech where we're like, I'm not sure I know what this person's talking about, because they're using very industry specific words, technical jargon. If you are an expert, try to bring it down or break it down to kind of layman's terms. If you can, use an analogy. I remember working with a group from the Wolf Center, and they had a multi-dentate bonding chemical. And I just was like, no idea what that meant. So we came up with this analogy, because every time they talked about it, the audience was confused, of saying, well, a normal bond is 2 hands. Think of a gymnast with 2 hands on a high bar. And a multi-dentate would be that same gymnast having 10 hands. Which one do you think will adhere to the high bar better? And now people understood, oh, it's just got like a lot more adherence points to it. So you don't want to use a lot of technical jargon. It'll ruin your presentation. You don't want to speak at great length about the history of your organization. Well, we've been in business for 10 years. Let me tell you about that first year we were in business. It was really tough. And then the second year we did this before you even get to the topic of your speech. You're 30 minutes in talking about how great your organization is. You might not want to bother rehearsing. If you don't rehearse and you don't know how long your talk's going to run, then this class, which is supposed to last at a maximum an hour and 20 minutes, well, maybe it's going to last 2 hours or 2.5 hours or 3 hours because I didn't bother to check my time or see how long it was going to take. That is not the way you want to do things. I think for some of us, I mean, I remember growing up and going to some services with my parents, like church services, and thinking, oh my gosh, how long is this guy going to talk? It was like the worst. So that's a way to ruin a presentation. You really don't want to sound as if you're reciting from memory. If you do, it'll ruin the presentation. Because what happens is, as you're talking, you get stuck trying to remember what's next. And you have an awkward pause. And you say things like, give me a second, and I'll remember what I'm supposed to talk about. I can't remember what's next. Oh, I now remember. Yes, because we don't want to make eye contact with anyone in the audience. That's another way to ruin a presentation. Imagine if, like, this rest of this speech I gave as I walked around, or let you look at the side of my ear, or I disappeared because the background, sometimes these virtual backgrounds, look, my right shoulder's gone. Look, my left shoulder's gone. Imagine if you never got any eye contact, right? It's a good way to ruin a presentation. So here's some things right up front that you don't want to do. And you can thank the students that have said, Steve, you got to bring a little bit more humor back into what you're doing for this list right here. Okay, so what we're going to actually focus on for the rest of this video is the elevator pitch. The elevator pitch, otherwise known as an elevator speech, it's really just a short, persuasive speech, 30 seconds long maximum. You really have to have it ready anytime, anywhere. I mean, you have to be able to pull this thing out on a moment's notice. The things you're going to talk about in it, what it contains, who you are, your company, what your company does, and your products. I mean, it's that simple. And the goal, it's to get the person interested in you or your company enough in what you're doing so that you can have follow-on meetings or have follow-on conversations. You're not trying to win a sale. You're not trying to close a customer with your elevator pitch. It's all about getting interest generated. That's the point of this thing. Can you make yourself interesting enough so that the person or the company will want to contact you again? So simply put, it answers the question, so what do you do? I mean, think about how many times you're asked, what do you do? I mean, you walk into a bar, you're trying to meet a bunch of new guys. Hey man, what do you do? You're trying to meet a new girl. You might say, what's your name? You use your greatest pickup line. And then she's going to say, so what do you do? I mean, you have to have kind of a little bit of a what you do. And so there's the what you do from a company perspective and the who you are from a personal perspective. If you think about it, both of them are about 30-second elevator pitches. So we'll talk about how you create one of these. Okay, so how do you do it? First of all, start that elevator pitch with something that grabs attention. What's a common problem in your industry? I'm going to go through an example of this that I had one of the companies that we helped do this morning. So start with something that grabs attention. I mean, you try to do this if you think about it. If you're trying to meet somebody new, you have some sort of pickup line that you're using. It's all about trying to grab attention. It's the same thing with an elevator pitch. State how you or your company solves the problem that you just used to grab attention. Say who you are, what you do. Explain how you do it and what the results are. In other words, this is what we do, and here's the results or the benefits to our customers or to our clients. And then be ready to answer some questions. Make sure you have a business card in hand if they ask for it, or be ready to enter your contact information into someone else's phone. I know a lot of that happens where people exchange phones and, hey, I'll just give you my number. Now, I know with the coronavirus stuff and nobody touching anything and everything, social distance, that's not happening right now. But eventually we're going to be over that, and that stuff will start happening again. And then at the end of the day, don't get upset if your elevator speech doesn't get you what you want immediately. You're going to go, as we're going to go through this little lesson, you'll end up going back and rehearsing and changing and modifying and editing your elevator speech until it gets really, really good. Okay, so how do I actually create one of these? Yes, you're going to write out things. You're going to write this out. You're going to sit down with a piece of paper, or you're going to get on your computer and you're going to have your little fingers dance across the keyboard. And you're going to say, what can be my attention grabber? What is our industry's problem? How does my company solve that problem? You literally write this stuff down. Who you are. Yes, who you are. My name is Steve Wilbur. Type it out. Who the company is. I work for University of Houston. You type that stuff out. You type out what's the results of your work, what makes your company unique. And then you edit all that into kind of a script or an elevator pitch that you like. Once you've done that, you need to rehearse it. After a bunch of rehearsals, go record it. And then listen to your recording. Make sure you don't sound awkward or too salesy. I mean, nothing's worse than coming across not natural or not like you normally are. Check your time. Make sure it's less than 30 seconds. You got to practice a lot. Once you're done practicing and practicing and practicing, go live to someone that you trust and go get feedback. Do you sound natural? Is your elevator pitch conversational? Is it free flowing? Is it something that they're like, hey man, yeah, that was really good. Easy to listen to, totally no problem at all. Once you've gotten kind of positive feedback that you have it down, go get into the market and start using it. But you have to do this. You have to write it out. You have to practice. You have to rehearse. You have to record. You have to listen back. You have to edit. And then you have to go into the market and use it. It isn't like something that you just want to be winging. You want to sound really put together. So I actually went and visited a company this morning that we're helping, and they're called HTX Red. And they're brand new. I mean, it's a new company. It's a startup. And I walked in and I said to the staff, hey, we're going to be doing this elevator pitch class today at University of Houston. What's y'all's elevator pitch? And they thought for a while and said, you know what, we haven't really developed one yet. And I said, well, let's do it on the fly using these 4 things. So here's what they came up with. Did you know that most general contractors add a minimum of 15% of additional costs to their project bid once their project has started? And they do this using change orders. At HTX Red, we have created a project methodology that leverages technology to ensure our construction clients' projects come in on time, on budget, with no unanticipated additional costs due to change orders. And I thought, you know what? That's pretty good. I mean, they took 30 minutes to an hour to kind of kick it around and have different ideas and go through different drafts. And they kind of wrote out bullet points, and this is kind of what it is. And so, I mean, if you think about how easy an elevator pitch is, it's that easy. Now, is that a perfect elevator pitch? No. Could it use some work? Maybe. But it's pretty good for 30 minutes to an hour of quick work this morning. So that is how you put an elevator pitch together. Now, here's some other examples for you. And these will be companies that you know. And I specifically grabbed companies you know so that you could start to understand how to put one together. Airbnb. If you don't know who Airbnb is, they're VRBO, they rent houses or rooms to people who are traveling or you want to go somewhere. But I mean, they're all over the place, right? I think everybody knows Airbnb or VRBO. And their attention grabbing line, most tourists who are booking actually care about price. Yeah, that's attention grabbing, but even more attention grabbing. And hotels, by the way, are one of the highest costs when people travel. Okay, yeah, now you've got my attention. You're talking about money. Then you get into, there's some things out there like couch surfing that, there's a small market already happening. So it's proven that there's a market for a service where people would rent out rooms or rent their houses. And then they talk about what they've done. How have they solved the problem? They've got a platform. It connects travelers. Travelers save money. And oh, by the way, we just take 10%, 10 little percent. Not a whole lot of money, just this little 10% commission off the top. So they're talking about attention grabbing thing at the very beginning, what's going on in the market, and then what makes them unique, how they're going to work. So you can see they've put together a pretty succinct, pretty good elevator pitch. Let's look at WeWork. If you don't know WeWork has been all over the news lately, right? I mean, their CEO laid off a bunch of people and then did tequila shots with all the people he didn't lay off, the rest of the employees. Not really a great leadership thing if we were going back to our leadership lessons from a few videos ago. They also had a botched IPO. Then they had a $3 billion investment from SoftBank out of China, and that went south just recently. I mean, just recently. They were actually on the news again this morning because they're trying to renegotiate their leases with a bunch of their tenants, a bunch of their landlords because they're starting to run into some financial problems. But let's look at what their elevator pitch is. I mean, they grew like gangbusters. They grew really fast. So I mean, they did a good job attracting initial investment, so they must have a decent elevator pitch. So let's see what they did. There are 40 million independent workers in the United States. That's their attention grabbing comment. And you know what? That grabs my attention. I didn't know there was 40 million independent workers in the US. They then get into a little bit of the problem. Oh, by the way, office space is expensive, especially in big cities. It's expensive. So they came up with this whole concept of space as a service. And what they're saying is you can rent a desk or rent an office, and then you don't have all of the complications of a traditional lease where you have to go sign a long-term lease. A lot of their stuff can be month to month or for the quarter or at the most for a year. And you can typically save 25% of a normal cost, but you get these shared service accesses, front desk, mailroom, in a community of like-minded people, people that are like you, other entrepreneurs or small business owners that are working in a WeWork location, and it kind of plugs you into that community. So that's their elevator pitch, pretty effective, attention grabbing, problem, solution, what's in it for the customer. Finally, we're going to look at Slack. I know a lot of college students have used Slack, or a lot of programs are using Slack now. So what did they use to grab our attention? Let's see. The average office worker receives 304 emails a week. 304 emails. I mean, that grabs my attention. That's a lot. I mean, that's 60 minutes. I mean, 60 emails a day if I'm there 5 days a week. And what if I only take a minute or 2 minutes per email? That's 1 to 2 hours of my entire day doing nothing but working on emails. But then they grab more attention. And oh, by the way, people also attend on average 62 meetings a month. 62 meetings. That's 2 a day if I was working 30 days a month. And we don't work 30 days a month. We work like 22. So, I mean, that's 3 meetings a day. And half of those, they were like, and yeah, they're a waste of time. So they go to all these meetings. They don't want to be there, and they're a waste of time. Have they grabbed your attention? They've grabbed my attention. So then they get into what they do. Well, we were made, we were made to make work more efficient because they organize things by channels, and it reduces the need for emails and meetings. So what you're telling me, if I'm listening to this, is you can make some of my 304 emails and some of my 62 meetings go away. Okay, that's a good thing. And then they get into more positive things of, and by the way, we integrate with tons of other productivity tools like your existing email, your Dropbox, your Zoom, your Google Docs, your calendars. So again, this is Slack's elevator pitch. Pretty effective, pretty good. They do a good job of saying, oh, by the way, let me grab your attention. Here's the problem. Here's our solution. Here's some benefits and things that we do. So this is how you want to go put your elevator pitch together. Okay, so in summary, when are you going to use your elevator pitch? Obviously at a networking event where you're walking around trying to meet people from other companies. Remember from our networking class, you're wanting to say how you can help them. Then hopefully we'll get into conversations about how they can help you. But I'm telling you right now, they're going to know, what do you do? It's a big part. You're going to use it at a conference. You go to a trade conference or an industry conference where people are getting together. Client calls. You're making a warm call or a cold call on a client, and you're like, hi, I'm, Joe Smith. And they're like, well, hi, Joe from company X. What do you do? That's what they're going to want to know. Why do you have me on the phone? How are you going to get that person's attention in that second to keep him on the phone? If you're like, oh, well, company X does this, you're already gone. If you start with a fact or an attention grabbing fact, it's going to make your ability to keep that client prospect on the phone much greater. Okay. Now, here's another time you're going to need an elevator pitch for like a job interview. This will be your personal elevator pitch. You have to develop a personal pitch just like you develop a pitch for your company. Imagine walking into a job interview and actually being able to do some things to grab their attention. A career fair, another time you're going to use that personal pitch. So remember the way career fairs are set up. You have all of these companies, they're all lined up behind tables. All these students are walking by trying to grab information on companies and hand their resumes. 95% of the people that stand in front of those tables are like, hi, my name's Steve Wilbur. I'm a University of Houston student with a major in business. I will be graduating in May. I'm looking for a job. And they hand over their resume. Imagine instead if you were able to say, hi, welcome, oil company XYZ. I read that you guys have 32% of your production out in West Texas. I grew up in West Texas and, would love to get back there, and you get into something else, right? But you've grabbed their attention because instead of just being like everyone else, you've actually talked about some attention grabbing fact that has to do with their business. Okay, so you want to develop this personal pitch. Remember, this is the biggest thing to remember. An elevator pitch is not an opportunity to close a deal. If you're using a personal pitch, you're not trying to get hired. You're just trying to get to the next step of an interview. If you are truly meeting someone and you're telling them what you do, you're just trying to get to the next meeting. It's not an opportunity to close a deal. It's an opportunity to get more of the prospect's attention, more of their time. That's what you're trying to do. And it's a quick introduction to you, your company, and how you can help your prospect. That, at the end of the day, is what an elevator pitch is about. So hopefully this was informative, and we'll be back shortly with talking about pitch decks and that type of thing. So have a great day.